Howdy, how's it going? Welcome back, or howdy if you're new. This is the Thermaltake Tower 300, and I'm gonna tell you my entire experience with this thing, for better and definitely for worse. I'm going to be brutally honest about this case because I and a few other colleagues have had a few headaches with it, and I think it's time for us to kind of break the ice here and tell you exactly how I feel from start to finish. I love this case, don't get me wrong. I love the way it looks. It was the exact form factor and size that I was looking for. It saved me a lot of real estate on my desk. It offered a lot of great features, but it comes at a great cost, and not just financially, because the price on it is actually pretty good. So if you're willing to tinker with a few things and you're willing to make a few sacrifices, this may still be the case for you. But before we dive too deep, I want to say a quick thank you to the channel OGs. You guys are the GOAT, and I really appreciate you, and I appreciate all the recent subs lately. Thank you guys so much. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So my previous case was the Strix Helios, and it was just too big on my desk. I had no room to work with, so I decided to find something that had a little bit more vertical real estate rather than horizontal real estate. This came highly recommended. All the reviews were great. But quickly I realized everything is not all it's cracked up to be. Let's just go ahead and dive in and let me show you the number one issue I have with this case. Up here you've got the top little shroud that's protecting your fans, and you've got to ask yourself, where's the rear IO? Is it around back? No, it's not. It's inside the computer in here. Let's say you need to unplug something. Let's say you want to hook up a capture card or your flash drive or pretty much anything. You have no access back here to any of your stuff. So what do? You come over here, you undo the fan holder, and try not to smash your finger, and then go ahead and disconnect your fan for safety. Pull that out, and now you've got access to your rear IO slightly. The problem is you still have to have your GPU cables bent to a point where they will probably stress fracture inside and maybe give you some, picture issues, but it's not really too bad on mine. I think this one's probably a little on the fritz for that monitor, but this one over here has been completely fine. I got a beefier cable there. But you have only just the smallest amount of clearance, so you're not going to be able to plug in longer capture cards or it'll run into the fans. So yeah, you could always run a hub. Yeah, you could totally run a hub. But the problem is these only have so much bandwidth that can squeeze through a single USB-C. Maybe if you're using a Thunderbolt dock or something, you could get around that. But this computer only has one USB-C, and I actually use that for my capture card, and it does not like to be put on a hub.
No, don't like that.
It doesn't work right. It just refuses to turn on while it's in a hub. So that's the problem that I have the most hate for. I just don't like that part. So the other problem is this little LCD down here. Now, as cool and novel as it is, it's barely legible for the temperatures if you want to run a GIF on there. If you decide that you want to run the ugly temperature monitor, which I'll show you here now, well, you could do that. But if you want anything else, like most other modern displays, you can't really change that. You have to basically deal with the small text, and it has to go through. So you can't have bar graphs, you can't customize it, you're SOL. There may be a way around that, but that's the only thing that I know is just the Thermaltake software, which is terrible. So it comes out, you've got access to your connectors, to your power supply down there. Nice little access panel. I like that. Fitting it back on here sometimes, you have to kind of shove these back in there, but eventually it'll go in. You've got tons of airflow in this case, actually. Speaking of airflow, this is a RTX 4090. I'm having some issues with this unrelated to this case, which we'll talk about in a future video. But E-Rock on Tech, good buddy of mine, he had one of these cases too, and he had a PNY 4090, and his was thermally throttling, and it was just not doing well. He reached out to PNY, they weren't able to help him resolve it. They were telling him it was within spec, it was safe, yada yada yada, but you could tell the performance was thermally throttling. It wasn't a good situation. So I tested it in mine. My temps are fine. We started doing some research, and apparently some GPUs that have a specific vapor chamber design are actually going to perform worse in this orientation. Not all, not most, but a few. There have been a lot of tests where people have debunked this, but it's simply just not true because they weren't able to test every single GPU that exists. So his was a prime example. And how we proved that, we tried forcing air, we tried changing the airflow, we tried doing everything humanly possible until I had the bright idea. I said, grab the computer and rotate it, and then prop it up on something so you're not blocking these bottom vents. And guess what? It dropped just like that. While it was on, while it was in a game. That is proof that vertical orientation for some GPUs does have an issue, and some people may or may not even know, but that is a thing. So fortunately for me, I don't have that issue, but one of the main things I have a problem with is with these 40 series and 50 series cards, you've usually got these Bohank and Donkles. These are just ugly dingleberries. They're an eyesore. This is absolutely gross. So you've got this thing hanging out all over here. Yeah, you could totally use a custom cable, but I'm a little hesitant to use custom cables for the time being because we're seeing so many cards melt because some of these custom cables, they're getting a bad rap. So I'd rather just stay away from it for warranty's sake at the very least. So look, I do have custom cables for the power supply, for the CPU pins up here, and then the 24 pin down there. As far as the other specs, I'm running a Arctic Liquid Freezer 3, and it is a 420. Yeah, turn up. It's a 420 millimeter AIO, and this thing is absolutely awesome. I love it. It's got a fan right here with a little magnetic shroud that cools the VRMs and the power delivery behind it, so it kind of keeps around the socket cool as well and forces some airflow through there. We're running Clev 6400 CL32. It's 32 gigs. Really good kit of RAM. And then for the CPU, I do have a 14900K. It is lapped and polished, and stability wise, it's very stable. This is a Z790 Elite AX Ice or Elite Ice X or whatever, but this is actually a really good board. I really like this board in particular, but the only thing I don't like is the rear IO. It's a little lacking. I kind of wish it had more ports. But as far as the rest of it, the performance of it, the BIOS, the stability, it's been amazing. I love this board so much. Now for my GPU, I'll quickly dive into the GPU. This has served me well for a few years now, and I love this GPU. This is a Strix OC 4090 in white, really rare. You don't see these often, and probably won't see many of them again because people are scalping them, but this card is not stable anymore for the most part. If you put this thing under load, it may run, it may crash. You do a stress test, it may pass, it may not. If you just sit at your desktop, it may crash, it may not. It does not care, it just randomly wants to crash. And I've taken the GPU out, I've put it in a completely different rig with a completely different power supply and had the exact same results. Well, it did it. It crashed in my wife's rig, doing absolutely nothing but sitting at the desktop, sitting idle. And I also put a different GPU in here. I put my wife's Asus TUF 4070 Ti in here, and it was fine. I don't have a problem with other GPUs. She doesn't have a problem with other GPUs except mine, so definitely something with the GPU. And I've looked at the Windows error reports and everything else, and they all are pointing to GPU failure, and I'll put some of the error messages up here. But yeah, this is something that I've been dealing with. I'm gonna hopefully RMA it pretty soon. I just need to be able to have some downtime with it. But one of the other things that I did, I actually was able to squeeze 3 Lian Li uni fans in here. And how I did that is I've got 2 screws up at the top, and then I've got 2 screws down at the bottom. And when you open it up, see if I can push this out. It's a little tricky. These magnets are really strong. I actually even put some tape in there to help it. But there is maybe a millimeter of clearance. So it's forcing a little bit more cool air in there. I don't have these running very high, but it definitely had lowered temperatures a few degrees Celsius, so it's always nice to have cool air coming through there instead of just staying stagnant or pulling hot air from down below in the power supply bay. Also, this is set to intake or exhaust. Really, it's exhausting upwards, and these are going outwards. And like I said, I've tried all different configurations, intake, exhaust, you name it. This is the best for me, so your mileage may vary. Now let's look around the back. Don't laugh, but it's pretty bad. I actually gave up on cable managing this thing because there really is no cable management. There's not really a good way to manage this. But I did have some fans on the back of this that came with it, but the cables would randomly bump loose if you move it, unless you had them super zip tied, but I might need to get inside my rig, so I really tried to avoid zipping down those cables. So yeah, there's been quite a few little headaches with this rig. Otherwise, I mean, I love the aesthetics of this case. It's actually not a bad looking case, other than those little naggles that I have about it. And like I said, this case may still be perfect for someone, but it's not perfect for me. So now the question is, what case am I upgrading to? Well, this guy right here will give you a hint. If you are a channel OG member, you might already know. You probably have already seen it. So channel members, thank you guys so much. I love y'all so much. They get first exclusive looks to certain projects and certain things that I'm working on that just aren't ready yet to talk about. So I really like to give them kind of what I can. If I'm not under NDA and I could disclose something, yes, by all means, I'm an open book. So I want you guys to get excited. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be coming quick. After this video, I film, I'm gonna go ahead and edit it, and then I'm gonna start taking this thing apart. And then we're gonna start putting it back together in a new chassis, and I think you guys are gonna love it. So I've been trying to orchestrate something so spicy and so awesome that you guys aren't even going to realize how monumental and how crazy this is if it happens. I really, really hope it happens, because if it does, you guys are going to get some of the spiciest and most coolest things put in front of your eyes. And I don't want to spoil it because I don't want to jinx myself, but either way, I have a backup plan. I always have backup plans, so prepare yourselves for some really spicy content. We're definitely going to be having desktop content. I'm definitely diving back into some more handheld stuff. I've got another handheld that should be arriving pretty soon, and then I also have some plans for some mods, the OG Ally mods. I've got something cooking for that. I definitely want to show you guys what I'm working on, so if you want to see anything in particular, drop it down in the comments. Become a member, help the channel out. It helps me, it helps you. I really appreciate you guys. The love and the support has been absolutely overwhelming, and I wouldn't be here without y'all. And I just want you to know that I do this for the community. I love mods. I love showing off what I'm working on. I love sitting in the Discord talking to you guys and helping y'all out. Anytime you need anything, you know where I'm at. Don't hesitate to ask, and I shall receive. So, alright guys, you know what time it is. As always, I hope you have a good afternoon, good evening, or good night.